World Economic Forum is a fanatical political organization.
The main leaders of the Western world have abandoned the model of freedom for different versions of what we call collectivism.
It's laughable that you would, or anyone would, describe Davos as protecting liberal democracy. It's equally laughable to use the word dictatorship at Davos and aim that at President Trump. In fact, I think that's absurd.
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, I'm going to be covering what's been happening over the past week at the World Economic Forum annual meetup in Davos. Now, normally I would cover these issues through the medium of a debate, but there's just so much going on in the world at the moment that I feel compelled to make these informational videos where I take a sequence of clips that I've found throughout the internet and try and make a reasonably brief but pretty comprehensive video around a certain topic. So I do hope you guys enjoy these videos as well. So, what is the World Economic Forum? Founded in 1971 by Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum is an international private organization which receives billions of tax-free dollars from its members and global enterprises. Every year, they take over Davos, a skiing village in Switzerland, bringing together on their private jets a legion of world leaders, big pharma executives, big tech giants, Hollywood celebrities, media personalities, internet influencers, and much more. Now, one of the most significant aspects of the WEF is the Young Global Leaders Program. Some of the alumni that have come through the ranks include, but are not limited to, Mark Zuckerberg, Justin Trudeau, Jacinda Ardern, Emmanuel Macron, Angela Merkel, and more. And Klaus Schwab doesn't try and hide the intention of this.
When I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
So you see what's going on here. There is a top-down agenda at play whereby decision-making is happening at a centralized place, and then there are a series of minions scattered throughout the world who are doing the bidding of this centralized institution. Klaus Schwab seems to have also taken a great interest in future elections and how technology might impact that.
The technology now is, and digital technologies mainly have an analytical power. Now we go into a predictive power, and we have seen the first examples, and your company very much involved into it. But then the next step could be to go into a prescriptive mode, which means you do not even have to have elections anymore, because you can already predict, and afterwards you can say, why do we need elections? Because we know what the result will be.
Predictive elections, hey? We did it based on the polls. What could possibly go wrong? Now, jokes aside, guys, I'm not somebody who thinks that everybody who attends the World Economic Forum annual meetup in Davos is evil, and when they close the door that they just start worshipping Satan, although some of them probably do that. I'd say that for a lot of people, it's just that they're very successful in their respective fields, and this event is an extremely significant networking event for them. You've got the who's who of the tech, financial, NGO, and political world, and you might be able to do some deals, get some funding, meet important people, and have a few sex parties. Well, that's just based upon the fact that all of the escort services in the area were totally sold out for the event. No surprises there.
Naughty, naughty.
So I get it. But the problem that I and so many others have with the World Economic Forum is that at the top echelons of this organization, there are some extremely sinister individuals with some extremely sinister intentions and agendas.
I mean, first of all, we have to accept that the World Economic Forum is a fanatical political organization that uses fear and manipulation like COVID hysteria, like the hoax of global warming, to really facilitate people thinking that somehow they're the saviors, but really all you're doing is helping them accomplish their goal, which really is a global public-private fascist movement and fusion of big government, big tech, big money to create a technocratic ruling elite, which conveniently is them. And really, Laura, if you want to look at it a different way too with the World Economic Forum, they want to create feudalism 2.0 in which we are serfs and they are the lords ruling over us. You'll have nothing and be happy is one of the things that comes out of Davos. That's what they're aiming for. They're aiming for feudalism in which we are serfs and we should be happy that they are ruling over us.
The WEF is quite clearly, openly and brazenly a fascist collusion between giant corporations, media organizations, political leaders and non-governmental organizations. They see themselves as the global elites who need to centralize decision-making power conveniently into their own hands and away from the great unwashed peasants like us, because the sun is getting hotter apparently and the cows keep fighting.
Exactly, are burping.
And we must act now. And this is the reason that us powerful billionaires are putting our desire for money, power, and control aside to fight climate change and prepare for future pandemics. Truly noble and totally believable. But this year, guys, things are a little bit different because there's actually a little bit of pushback from within, and it seems as though there are cracks in the damn wall. So with that, let's have a look at some of the highlights of the week so far, starting off with Javier Milei, the Argentinian president, who gave the Davos gang a few pointers.
Today, I'm here to tell you that the Western world is in danger. And it is endangered because those who are supposed to have to defend the values of the West are co-opted by a vision of the world that inexorably leads to socialism and thereby to poverty. Unfortunately, in recent decades, motivated by some well-meaning individuals willing to help others, and others motivated by the wish to belong to a privileged caste, the main leaders of the Western world have abandoned the model of freedom for different versions of what we call collectivism. We're here to tell you that collectivist experiments are never the solution to the problems that afflict the citizens of the world. Rather, they are the root cause. Do believe me, no one better placed than us, Argentines, to testify to these 2 points. Far from being the cause of our problems, free trade capitalism as an economic system is the only instrument we have to end hunger, poverty, and extreme poverty across our planet. The empirical evidence is unquestionable. Therefore, since there is no doubt that free enterprise capitalism is superior in productive terms, the left-wing doxa has attacked capitalism, alleging matters of morality, saying, that's what the detractors claim, that it's unjust. They say that capitalism is evil because it's individualistic and that collectivism is good because it's altruistic, of course, with the money of others. So they therefore advocate for social justice. But this concept, which in the developed world became fashionable in recent times, in my country has been a constant in political discourse for over 80 years. The problem is that social justice is not just, and it doesn't contribute either to the general well-being. Quite on the contrary, it's an intrinsically unfair idea because it's violent. It's unjust because the state is financed through tax, and taxes are collected coercively. Or can any one of us say that they voluntarily pay taxes, which means that the state is financed through coercion, and that the higher the tax burden, the higher the coercion, and the lower the freedom.
Just quickly, guys, if you support this message and if you think that more people need to see this, then I'll kindly ask you to hit that like button for me and help me out with the algorithm. And also, if you just like being armed and dangerous in general and you haven't subscribed, then that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So make sure you subscribe. Back to the clips.
The dilemma faced by the neoclassical model is that they say they wish to perfect the functioning of the market by attacking what they consider to be failures. But in so doing, they don't just open up the doors to socialism, but also go against economic growth. An example, regulating monopolies, destroying their profits and destroying growing returns automatically would destroy economic growth. In other words, whenever you want to correct a supposed market failure inexorably, as a result of not knowing what the market is, or as a result of having fallen in love with a failed model, you are opening up the doors to socialism and condemning people to poverty. However, faced with the theoretical demonstration that state intervention is harmful and the empirical evidence that it has failed couldn't have been otherwise, the solution to be proposed by collectivists is not greater freedom, but rather greater regulation, which creates a downward spiral of regulations until we're all poorer and the life of all of us depends on a bureaucrat sitting in a luxury office. Given the dismal failure of collectivist models and the undeniable advances in the free world, socialists were forced to change their agenda. They left behind the class struggle based on the economic system and replaced this with other supposed social conflicts which are just as harmful to life as a community and to economic growth. The first of these new battles was the ridiculous and unnatural fight between man and woman. Therefore, in concluding, I would like to leave a message for all business people here and for those who are not here in person but are following from around the world. Do not be intimidated either by the political class or by parasites who live off the state. Do not surrender to a political class that only wants to stay in power and retain its privileges. You are social benefactors, you're heroes, you're the creators of the most extraordinary period of prosperity we've ever seen. Let no one tell you that your ambition is immoral. If you make money, it's because you offer a better product at a better price, thereby contributing to general well-being. Do not surrender to the advance of the state. The state is not the solution. The state is the problem itself. You are the true protagonists of this story. And rest assured that as from today, Argentina is your staunch, unconditional ally. Thank you very much, and long live freedom. Damn it.
So, very based there by Mr. El Presidente. I think that on face value, this is a sign that things are changing, and pretty significantly, because before there was no pushback. Nobody was really invited who would do such a thing. But now I think that the detestation for this forum has grown so large that it's actually hard to fill a room without finding a few people who have some serious objections. And this is within elite high achieving circles as well, because they're not all horrible people. I mean, we saw Jordan Peterson's ARC forum this year, which is literally designed as a way to push back on the WEF. And their speakers and guests were way more impressive. But Javier Milei wasn't the only one with a bone to pick there. Check out Heritage Foundation's president Kevin Roberts ripping into them as well.
It's laughable that you would, or anyone would, describe Davos as protecting liberal democracy. It's equally,
standing up for it.
It's equally laughable to use the word dictatorship at Davos and aim that at President Trump. In fact, I think that's absurd. But I'm going to step aside from that constructive criticism and instead answer your question.
Yep.
And I'm going to be substantive here. President Trump, if he's the next president, for that matter, I think whoever the next conservative president, is going to take on the power of the elites, which I mentioned earlier. But the thing that I want to drive home here, the very reason that I'm here at Davos, is to explain to many people in this room and who are watching, with all due respect, nothing personal, but that you're part of the problem. Political elites tell the average people on 3 or 4 or 5 issues that the reality is X, when in fact reality is Y. Take immigration. Elites tell us that open borders and even illegal immigration are okay. The average person tells us in the United States that both rob them of the American way of life. They're right. President Trump will take that on behalf of the average American. Elites also tell us that public safety isn't a problem in big American cities. Just travel to New York or Washington or Dallas, Texas. The average person will tell you that the lack of public safety damages not just the American way of life, but their life. President Trump will take that on. Thirdly, I guess the favorite at the World Economic Forum is climate change. Elites tell us that we have this existential crisis with so-called climate change, so much so that climate alarmism is probably the greatest cause for mental health crisis in the world. The solutions, the average person know, based on climate change are far worse and more harmful and cost more human lives, especially in Europe during the time that you need heating, than do the problem and the problems themselves. Fourth, two more here, Robin. Okay. The fourth, China. The number one adversary, not just to the United States, but to free people on planet Earth. Not only do we at Davos not say that, we give the Chinese Communist Party a platform. Count on President Trump ending that nonsense. And fifth, as we sit here, another supranational organization, the World Health Organization, is discussing foisting gender ideology upon the global South. These are practices that are under review, if not being rejected, by countries in Northern Europe. The new president, especially if it's President Trump, will, as you like to say, trust the science. He will understand the basic biological reality of manhood and womanhood. And do you know why? Not because of retribution, not because he's a dictator, but because he has the power of the American people behind him. And it's connected to Senator Portman's excellent point that in addition to needing a vigorous executive, we look forward to having the popular will inform both the House and Senate in 2025 to pass laws on all of those issues and many others. Ultimately, Robin, I think President Trump, if in fact he wins a second term, is going to be inspired by the wise words of Javier Milei, who said that he was in power not to guide sheep, but to awaken lions. That's what the average American and the average free person on planet Earth wants out of leadership.
It's great to see people being a bit brave and saying what's not popular in a crowded room full of people who disagree with you and who actually have a lot of decision-making power. The pushback is very necessary. And I like to see it with a little bit of swagger and FU energy as well. For so long, people have been intimidated by these dorks and giving them way too much respect. Yes, they are very powerful people, but I think at the top, they're weak individuals who are scared of ideas. I mean, why don't they have some real debates happen? Why don't they invite a guy like Bjorn Lomborg to challenge their hysterical climate change narrative? Let's put the ideas on the stage and see who wins. No, they won't do that. Instead, they're going to have some room temperature IQ hippie talking about ecocide.
I mean, ecocide as a word is becoming better known around the world, and the concept is generally mass damage and destruction of nature. But legally speaking, what our organisation and other collaborators aim to do is to have this recognised legally as a serious crime. Because one of the issues that sort of pervades all of this discussion is that we have a kind of cultural, very ingrained habit of not taking damage to nature as seriously as we take damage to people and property. And that, I mean, you know, if you're campaigning for human rights, at least you know mass murder, torture, all of these things are serious crimes. But there's no equivalent in the environmental space. And so, you know, unlike an international crime like genocide that involves a specific intent, with ecocide, what we see is actually what people are trying to do, what businesses are trying to do is make money, is farm, is fish, is do all of these things that are, producing energy and so on as well. But what's missing is the awareness and the conscience around the side effects, around the collateral damage that happens with that.
Ecocide. Give me a break, lady. I would bet any money that she's never even stepped foot on a farm. Yet she wants everybody to adopt her gross vegan diet and wants to destroy the livelihood of our farmers and destroy the agricultural industry. Why? Because she is a watermelon. Green on the outside, red communist on the inside. And she's not the only watermelon at this event, guys.
To come back to what Carlos said about agriculture. And this is, I think, really important to understand. And it's a little depressing, but I think if we don't understand it, we can't fix it. So in the case of agriculture, so we know, as you said, agriculture, particularly animal agriculture, is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions, a major driver of climate change. So one thing people can do to help, in this case, is to eat less meat. So what are we seeing happening in the United States? The agriculture industry is spreading disinformation. But here's where it gets particularly tricky. Not about climate change. They're spreading disinformation about the public health benefits of a plant-forward diet. So one of the great things about eating less red meat, and you don't have to eliminate it altogether, but just eating less, good for the planet and it's good for your body. So this is a win-win solution, and it's something that we all could do. We all have the power. We all have agency over what we eat. But there are researchers in the United States who work on the health benefits of a plant-based diet who have been attacked by the same people who attack climate scientists. So this isn't about public understanding science or not being transparent. This is about an organized attempt to confuse people.
You don't want me to eat meat, lady? Well, I have got 2 words for you.
You fucking you bloody, fuck you bloody, bastard bitch, fuck you, bloody fuck you bloody.
Now, obviously, claiming that meat is unhealthy for human beings is a completely and utterly bullshit argument, but there's nobody to push back on that and to put her in her place for saying such ridiculous things. So this verbal fart that she has just produced just permeates the air with no solution because it goes with the agenda. What is the agenda? This farmer said it pretty well.
Because Klaus Schwab telling people to eat insects, but he also say, at the end, you will own nothing and still be happy. But Mr. Klaus Schwab will own everything. So the story, he will never eat the insects. He will force the poor people to eat insects and fake foods and produce hyper-produced foods, you know, with a lot of chemicals inside and they force the poverty upon people will bring them to the fact that they have to buy this kind of food because they can't afford the rest. And by breaking down family farms in the Netherlands, food security will be at high stakes.
So it is like communism, where they take from the poor people and only the rich people, the elite, they are the ones with all the power.
Well, actually, it's very painful to say, but a free and democratic country known all over the world, that we have very free laws and very free people that travel everywhere and make agreements all over the world, are now forced in some sort of pattern that we are, communism can be, it sounds like communism.
Guys, after this recording, I'm going to go and eat a big, juicy cut of steak, supporting local farmers and also supporting my immune system. And I would encourage you guys to also indulge in a fantastic and beneficial high-protein diet. As it says in Genesis, every creature that exists shall be yours to eat. And if you did want to know more about the European farmer protests that are happening at the moment, combating this particular agenda, then I made a video about it the other day. You guys can watch that next. But next up, just to show how virtuous the World Economic Forum really is and how much they truly care about the environment and the natives. They invited Elizabeth Warren to the event this year to rub their bare feet in the soil, grounding them in ancient traditions.
No Kamai, no Kanwaka, na Anuri, no Yuyua, na Wahon Shina, Punk and Tushina Shavawaki, Shinamo Kikirani, Tsai Shavakirani, Tsai Makikirani. Awama Wunun, Awama Wunun, no Mahunu, why should I?
So, I mean, if that's what they are doing on stage, imagine the kind of rituals that are happening behind closed doors. And now on to the part where we're going to discuss a little bit about Disease X.
In order to have better prepared and to address the Disease X is the pandemic agreement. The pandemic agreement can bring all the experience, all the challenges that we have faced and all the solutions into one. And that agreement can help us to prepare for the future in a better way, because this is about a common enemy. And without a shared response, starting from the preparedness, we will face the same problem as COVID. And deadline for the pandemic agreement is May 2024, and member states are negotiating. This is between countries, and I hope they will deliver this pandemic agreement by that time, by on the deadline.
So guys, I can't really say too much on YouTube about this, and I don't really like to speculate too heavily without concrete evidence, but what I will say is this. This is amazing because last time there was a pandemic, they were also having meetings preparing for it beforehand. And then when it did come around, obviously from some Chinese bloke eating a bat soup in a Wuhan wet market, the machine just started turning. All the propaganda coming out of China and Europe, lockdowns, masks, mass compliance, and eventually the cardiac juice being rolled out after just a few months. Incredible stuff, really. And Bill Gates, the genius, managed to pretty much predict this in his TED Talk. And then coincidentally, of course, and nobody ever really mentions this, but in September of 2019, there was a Netflix show released called Inside Bill's Brain. This was a show to tell us about the extraordinary genius mind of the visionary philanthropist, Bill Gates. So maybe guys, if you had been reading the writing on the wall before the last one, then you may have smelt something fishy. And so now it's disease X. Nothing to see here. Now, the last clip I wanted to show and the last point I wanted to make comes from a Dinesh D'Souza conversation.
Is there a kind of an underlying ideology of the World Economic Forum? People sometimes use the phrase globalism. Is that who these people are?
Yeah, another great question, Dinesh. That really is the part that fascinates me. Again, so much of what is being said in the sessions, you can watch that online, or you can see that it's being covered often dishonestly in major media, but nonetheless being covered to some extent. I think it's interesting that you're referring to, the God debates, the ones that we did with Dawkins and with Hitchens and Shermer and Daniel Dennett and all that kind of stuff, because that stuff was going on in a big way about a decade ago. And now it's as though these people are implementing that ideology, meaning the public debate on God has moved on a notch to where they just kind of assume there isn't one. And so the result is that it's as if these are people who look at, say, Orwell or Huxley and see it as a how-to manual. There aren't really any debates over religion, and they don't really debate anything. In fact, the thing that I thought was quite fascinating in engaging the WEFers, and you're generally I'm just talking about the attendees, not necessarily, although I did have an interesting conversation with Theresa May, former Prime Minister of the UK. But it reminds me, Dinesh, of the kind of conversations that we might have today on a university campus or on a high school, where their feelings trump your truth. And where the shared ethos is shared to such an extent that when a guy like me is in their midst and begins to push back just a little bit, there's a collective sense of, we don't actually even know how to answer his question.
So I really agree with what this gentleman is saying here. The new atheist movement and the cultural shift towards atheism in the West has put us in a place where in Britain in 2022, the majority of people said that they don't believe in God for the first time, down from 75% in 1981. Pew Research shows that as of 2020, about 64% of Americans identify as Christians, down from 90% 50 years ago. Furthermore, us humans are doing some unprecedented scientific and technological work at the moment. We're rapidly moving towards making ourselves basically obsolete, and we've seen that with the rise of AI just this year alone. If you think about it, depending on who you ask, of course, human beings have been evolving for hundreds and thousands of years. We've been in a state of non-participatory evolution, whereby we are evolving in a slow and natural way. And now we're in this strange period where we're crossing the border from non-participatory evolution to participatory evolution. We now have the science and technology at our disposal to excel our evolution and actually control the direction of it. Every day, we are moving closer and closer to becoming cyborgs, where we can easily manipulate our conscious experience to the point where we can import it into a virtual reality simulator. We already have virtual friends, communities, girlfriends, currencies, and even real estate at our disposal. So the path is laid for the future, and it's just so abundantly clear where this is going. And you may be somebody who's glad about that and who thinks, yep, this is just the natural, inevitable product of human development, and I get that point. But for me, it's the direct result of a civilization that's lost its connection with God. A civilization that has made the critical error of allowing global elites and idols to fill that void and actually play God by controlling and manipulating everything to do with the human experience. This to maximize mass instant gratification, as well as their own lustful, megalomaniacal desire and egoistic fantasies of immortality. These are people that might be smart and technologically advanced and at the cutting edge of what we would call progress, but they're not wise, because fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And I would confidently hazard a guess that none of these individuals are God-fearing. Otherwise, they would not dare insult the king.